Welcome to Poetry. Describe it, understand it, enjoy it. I'm Bill Walker, and I will be teaching the course. I want to begin by asking you what you want. Do you want to acquire and improve knowledge? Knowledge of the defining features of poetry in the English language. Knowledge of what it is about any given text that makes us think it is poetry. Do you want knowledge of what poetry achieves, what it can achieve, what makes some poems special and good? And do you want knowledge of special vocabularies that have been developed to describe poetry in English? Are you interested in developing abilities, right? In addition to acquiring some knowledge, are you also concerned to develop some abilities, namely the ability to describe poetry in English in an articulate, precise, clear manner? The ability to identify the achievements and merits of particular poems, and the ability to account for, to explain and account for the merits and achievements of poems that you read and like. And finally, in addition to acquiring knowledge and developing some abilities, are you also concerned to deepen and enrich your experience of poetry in English? Do you want to improve the enjoyment you take in hearing and reading poetry in English? Do you want to deepen and improve your thinking about poetry, your intellectual engagement with it? If you are interested in these things, if those are some of the things that you want to get from this course, then this course may well be worth your time, effort, and money, since this is what it aims to give you. I hope this course provides to you a knowledge of English poetry, certain abilities to describe and understand it, and also certain experiences. I hope the course improves your experience of poetry, where that experience includes certain kinds of pleasure and enjoyment. What level of knowledge and ability are we talking about here? Well, I think I hardly know what to say. On the one hand, I think of this course as providing you with what I take to be the basics of poetry and studying poetry. It's an introduction to describing, understanding, and enjoying poetry. I hope it provides you with a foundation for further literary study and appreciation. And so the course covers some of what I think should be covered by serious English literary studies in high school. On the other hand, I believe that this material, much of this material anyways, is often not covered in English literary studies in high schools, in many Western countries at least. And I dare say it's often not covered in undergraduate university courses devoted to English literature, though again, I think it should be. I've had many undergraduate and graduate students over the last 20 years here at my university in Australia, and those students coming from many parts of the world who have not covered the material that we are going to cover in this course. So the course is an introduction to describing, understanding, and enjoying poetry, but it covers material which you may well not have covered, regardless of the kind of education you have had or the reading you have done. How am I going to attempt to achieve this, to achieve these aims, which I've just identified? Well, by doing several things. I'll give 7 classes, each of which will have 1 to 3 sessions. Most of these sessions will take the form of an audio-video recording, about 20 to 30 minutes, most of them, during which I will read some poetry, discuss it, and show a few slides that will provide you with a range of texts and a few images. We're going to concentrate on a well-known poem by William Wordsworth from the early 19th century. The poem usually goes by the title, "I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud," which is also the first line of the poem. This poem is going to be our central literary poetic text. We're going to concentrate on this poem. We're going to kind of use this poem. We'll take it as an occasion for achieving knowledge and developing abilities in relation to poetry in English in general. I will also provide some examples from a wide range of other literary texts by Shakespeare, Milton, a few Australian poets. And during these sessions, I will also provide you with special vocabularies that have been developed over very long periods of time in Western tradition, really over the last 2,500 years. I'll be providing you with these special vocabularies, which have been developed with the aim, at least in part, of describing poetry. And I will use these vocabularies to describe Wordsworth's poem in some detail. I want to give you an example of how to use these special vocabularies to describe poetry and to account for its achievements. Now, I know that some of these vocabularies, let me just say now that some of these special technical vocabularies may be new and strange to you. I mean, some of the terms, maybe you may be familiar with some of them, like metaphor or irony, but some of the other terms, such as, say, anadiplosis, might seem strange and new to you, and you might wonder what the point of learning the definitions of these terms and developing an ability to use them really is. Well, I think that studying these vocabularies and learning how to use them really helps us achieve the main aims of the course. Learning how to use these vocabularies helps us to describe with precision English poetry. But more important, in my mind, is that by studying and learning how to use these vocabularies, we can sharpen our perception and understanding of English poetry, and we can appreciate it more. That is to say that learning and using these special vocabularies is a means to an end, where the end is a sharpened perception and understanding of poetry in English. So I will try to achieve the main aims of the course, this knowledge and ability and experience that I mentioned earlier. I'll try to achieve the main aims of the course by reading Wordsworth's poem, discussing this poem in detail, citing and very briefly discussing a wide range of short passages from other poems and literary texts, and introducing you to some special vocabularies and using those special vocabularies to describe Wordsworth's poem. What do you need to do in order to benefit from the course, to get the most out of the course? Well, I mean, a lot of your benefit from the course will depend to a great extent on me, but of course it also depends in part on what you put into it. So to get the greatest benefit from the course, I think you need to read the Wordsworth poem, some of the other poems upon which we touch. Listen attentively to the readings of Wordsworth's poem. We're going to attend to the sound of the words, and so it's important that you really listen to the sound of Wordsworth's language. Listen also, let me encourage you also to listen attentively to the recordings. I've kept them pretty short, 20 to 30 minutes. So try to listen to those closely. Think about the questions I pose along the way. I will be pausing to pose you some questions, ask you to think about what we're doing along the way. So please try to put some effort into responding or thinking about responses to the questions I pose along the way. There are also some quizzes along the way. If you really want to develop that ability to use a technical vocabularies that we will consider, you may well want to do the quizzes, which are attached to some of the sessions, and also just reflect upon your experience. I think you'll get more out of the course if you think about the sessions as we go along. Now, all of this is organized as a curriculum, which is on display here. You can work through the course at your own pace in any order you like, really. You can take as much time as you want, but I think the course will be more coherent if you do it from beginning to end. That is to say, if you move from class 1 through to class 7, and don't wait too long in between sessions. So the first class is this one, which includes the welcome and introduction, and also an audio recording of I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. In the second class, we'll try to get clear about poetry as a genre or kind of literature. We'll try to get clear about what it is about any particular text that makes us identify that text or think of that text as poetry. In the second session of that class, we will then move to I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud and think about what makes this poem special and good. I think the poem is special and good in certain ways. And then I'll try to provide reasons for that evaluation of the poem. And here I'm going to highlight I'm going to encourage you to think about the achievement of the poem in terms of the power of the poem to provide us with certain experiences, namely to see certain things, to have vivid images of things, to feel certain emotions. I think one of the things that makes the poem good is that it makes us feel certain emotions, such as joy, comfort. And I also want to identify what it is about the poem that can also invoke us to think about important things in certain ways. Wordsworth says he is trying to arouse feelings and thoughts in his readers, and I think that he succeeds in doing this in this poem. So we'll identify the merits and achievements of I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud in that session. In the next sessions, generally, in the next classes, we will identify particular aspects of the language of the poem which account for those merits and achievements which we identify in the second class. We'll begin doing this by observing or listening to, hearing the sounds of Wordsworth's words. In particular, we'll look at the meter, the kind of meter and line we have in the poem. We'll describe the meter and line with precision. We'll describe other sounds of the words by having a brief look at the nature of vowels and consonants. And in the third session, we'll try to understand how particular features of the sounds of the words, such as rhyme, assonance, consonance, and alliteration, how those aspects of the sounds of the words go to account for the achievement of the poem. And I will provide you with clear definitions of those terms, which I just used: assonance, consonance, and alliteration. The first quiz for the course is attached to this session, a quiz on meter. Now, in the fourth class, we'll look at just diction, the kind of words. You know, there are different kinds of word, and poets use different kinds of words. Well, what kinds? Well, we'll try to be precise. We'll try to be precise in describing and identifying the kinds of words that Wordsworth uses. And I will present these observations as a further explanation of how Wordsworth's poem achieves what it does. In class 5, we'll continue to look at the language, but we'll look at Wordsworth's linguistic usage. One of the main types of unusual linguistic usage on display in the poem is tropological usage, or tropes. In session 1, we will get clear about what a trope is, and we will get clear about different types of tropological usage. And then we'll use that special vocabulary to, again, to describe the Wordsworth poem and to account for its achievements. The second quiz for the course is attached to that session, a quiz on tropes. Again, it's the quizzes are intended to give you some practice in using the technical vocabulary to identify, to describe with precision literary language and to understand how it works. So you could do that quiz on tropes there. And in class 6, we'll move to a second major type of unusual linguistic usage, which is also on display in the Wordsworth poem. That second type of unusual linguistic usage is referred to as figurative usage, or figures. In session 1, we'll get clear about what a figure is, how a figure is different from a trope, and we'll establish a set of terms which allow us to identify or describe and differentiate between various figures. In session 2, we'll then use that vocabulary to describe the Wordsworth poem and understand how it works. And again, there's the third and final quiz for the class is attached, for the course is attached to that class, the quiz on figures. Class 7 then will be a conclusion. We'll just kind of review and try to sum up the things that we have done over the entire course. During the course, I will refer to a range of resources which are attached to various sessions. All of these resources are available to you anytime. Most of them are downloadable. Go ahead and download them if you like. These resources include text and audio recording of the Wordsworth poem. Also, the text of a very important prose work, also written by Wordsworth, the preface to Lyrical Ballads. This text really has become it's now thought of as one of the major statements of thinking about poetry and art from the English Romantic period. Wordsworth wrote it as a preface to an anthology of poetry he published in 1798, the Lyrical Ballads. He publishes that anthology in 1800 and writes a preface to it. And he says, he really tries to explain what he's trying to achieve by writing the kind of poetry he writes. I will be referring to that text in the course, so I thought I'd include the entire text in case you want to read it, and I do encourage you to read it. It's a fantastic text. I also have drawn up documents on meters and lines, sounds, tropes, and figures, and attach those documents to the sessions in which we discuss those things. So you may well wish to consult those documents in order to achieve the things that the course is hoping to achieve. There's a short bibliography listing some of the things to which I refer along the way, a few websites relevant to what we're doing, and I've also included a short CV. As for my credentials for teaching this course, I'll keep it short. For details, you can, I've attached a short CV, which you may consult to see the kind of qualifications I have for teaching the course. But just in brief, I completed my PhD in English literature in the English department at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland in 1989. After that, I had a postdoc fellowship and taught at universities in the US, Canada, New Zealand, before taking a full-time academic position at the University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia in 2000. So I taught English literature. I was on full-time staff there, teaching English literature for 20 years, and was associate professor by the time I left in 2019. During these years, I also carried out research into English literature, published. The results of that research were mainly four books and about 30 articles in scholarly journals and anthologies devoted to English literature and the history of political thought. So that's just a very brief account of my CV. Please consult the CV if you want further details on it. Now, I want to conclude this session by getting to the poem, which will be the center of our attention for the course. Early 19th century poem by William Wordsworth, who's usually seen as one of the major poets of the English Romantic period. The poem is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, written probably 1804 to 1807 and first published by Wordsworth in an anthology of his poetry in 1807. And he publishes a revised expanded version of the poem in 1815. And that's the one that we will take as the text, as our text for this poem. I'll display the text and read the poem aloud. I think it's also a good idea just to listen to it without being distracted by anything visual. In case you just want to listen to it, well, you could just close your eyes while I read it now, or you can just listen to the audio recording, which I have included in this class as a separate session. But for the text and the sound of the words being read aloud, here it is. Here it is. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Isn't that lovely? Is this a poem? If so, why? What is it about the text, the words, that makes us think of it as poetry? And what is good about it? What is special? What is good about this poem? In the next two sessions, we will answer these questions.